Hello, everyone. Ron Zarate here, and you're watching Timing is Everything. And welcome to Episode 7, Intro to MariWine, within this first chapter of my musical journey. In this episode, I will be showcasing a song that I wrote back in December of 1991 titled MariWine. So I was lucky enough to find some original lyrics on this song that I would like to share with you today. Check these out. So people that know me say I'm a hoarder, but I don't think so, because it's items like this that I like to keep. Meaningful things to me, things that really mean so much to me. Whether it be from my youth, as a teen, or any time after that, it's meaningful to me. May not be much to others, but to me it is. Plus, attics are a perfect place to store things, right? What about these notebooks and everything that I have? This specific one right here that you see right here, it's back from 1991. Well, it's got a lot of lyrics, ideas, thoughts, and who would have known that in 2023 I would use it for this channel on an internet platform that's called YouTube. I'm sure if you would have told me back then, I would have thought you would be crazy. What you are seeing here are the actual lyrics from MariWine that I wrote back in 1991. That's my handwriting right there. And to add a funny note, many would say, I still write like this. So up to this point, I had been listening to a lot of different music. I was getting into country music because of my parents. Roughly about 4 months ago from this point, I was introduced to what we now know as grunge and some hip-hop for the first time. At the time, it was known as rock, then it morphed into alternative rock, and then now eventually grunge. But I was constantly listening to mixtapes. I had friends make me and actually stopped buying tapes at my local Sam Goody and common law music stores. Remember those? I miss those days for sure. As I read these lyrics to remember why I wrote this, it actually takes me back to the summer before I wrote this in 1990. I went to stay at a cousin's house that summer in another city about 200 miles or so from where I lived at the time. A few years later on, I went again, but that's another story. When I went for the first time, it was a different lifestyle what I was used to. I saw people happy, in a different state that I was used to seeing. People all around were just genuinely happy, to be honest. Not that I was not happy, it was just in a different manner. This was about the year where things started to change for me with my parents. I was a new teenager, started the beginnings of the rebellious teen phase that most of us go through. And my mother handled it one way, but my father handled it a bit different. Things started to take a different turn for me this year, as far as my family's perspective to me was concerned. The previous year, when I was visiting my cousin, I saw how happy people can be. Again, it was just different for me at this time. More of like a distant happiness or so. Little did I know at the time, my parents were starting to go through what I later found out to be the beginnings of a divorce. While I am not quite sure, I want to tend to believe that the frustrations my father had going through this were taken out on us. This is where I write about that. After an argument one evening, I was in my room and decided to write exactly how I was feeling. These times were a first for me. Now that I look back, and didn't know at the time, how common this can be in American households then, and actually more common in today's society, unfortunately. So as I wrote my thoughts on paper, I described my father walking in our home, coming home from work, and me fearing what was going to happen next, as it was extremely unpredictable. Would it be an argument with my mother, with me, with one of my sisters, or honestly, sometimes I would think, is he even coming home from work? Hence, a set of lyrics that I read and wrote, Unbleaching My Life Again. This specific set of words I used as lyrics mean a lot to me, because it was the very first time I used metaphors in any of my songs I was writing. In the song, I also say, I see your rain out. Those are tears I felt my father was hiding, but I could still see through him. I also talk about how the fear of what I didn't know could happen at any given time and how that would overtake the pain of my sciatic nerve I talked about in previous episodes. When I go to the chorus and say, I'm drinking MariWine, that is something I made up actually. A drink of fiction. A good drink though. A drink that took all the pain away, all the fear away, all the anger away. Going back to the year before of me staying at my cousin's house, it was the first time I was introduced to the sight of people drinking wine. Sure, I've heard of it before, probably saw it, didn't care to look or anything, right? But I just never saw anyone drink it live and in person right in front of me and knowing what it is. So going back to that, I decided to give this made-up drink a name that was like a fine wine. Of course, me being 13, I wouldn't know what a fine wine was at that point, right? So I made my own name and decided to use it not only in the song, but also as the title of my song. In addition to this, the rest of the lyrics continue to get metaphorical. Turpentine fingers. That is a description of how I viewed my father's hands, as he worked a lot with his hands with the bouts of construction, mechanics, landscaping, a general handyman per se, and a general contractor who later started his own contracting business and held that for many years. I wrote that as if I myself created those turpentine fingers, because I felt that my father worked as hard as he did to provide for me as a firstborn and for my sisters, and for that I thank him. The rest of the song does describe my thoughts of what was the beginnings of my parents' divorce. I describe how I feel, pressures of mine, pressures of my parents, pressures of what's going on, which was new to me at that time. You know, one of my best friends had divorced parents, actually. So I kind of have a general idea on how that worked from a child's perspective. I just never thought I myself would go through it. I mean, many folks seemed happy, right? They seemed to love each other, right? My folks, what I saw, it was the surface that I saw. While I didn't know at the moment in time, they were trying their best to not let it affect us. Little did I know the images of happiness that I had embedded in my brain were those of the past. Pictures I grew up seeing of when I was born, when I was a toddler, on my father's shoulders as a toddler, camping with the family. Generally, happy pictures all over the place, taking place over the years. Those days were long gone, and it appeared my parents were just drifting apart now for some reason. I didn't know how relationships work. I mean, who does? We're all different. We all do not think the same. We don't all have the same aspirations in life or the same goals. And that's what a relationship is built on, the trust, honor, and commitment to one another. Now that I look back, I can see where a lot may have gone wrong. But who am I to know? Who am I to say? I was their son. I was not in the relationship and in that relationship with either of them. So to those that have gone through divorce as a young child like I was going through at that time and have been, or as an adult, or maybe are experiencing one right now currently, my own personal advice would be, you do not need anyone to give you advice. Anyone at all. Why? Because you have already taken a deep look at yourself before you decided that the time has come. Only you know that time, and no one else. What I do recommend is to surround yourself with support because, trust me, you will need it. Friends, loved ones, even strangers, if you are open to that. And to be honest, I've had some of the best conversations on a bus ride with strangers that I will never forget. We can learn so much from each other if we are just open to the idea of it. Most importantly, believe in yourself. So I chose to showcase this song because it was the start of a major turning point in my life in two ways. One, experiencing divorce as a young child, and two, for the first time, I was writing lyrics metaphorically. This was the first of many songs early on that I wrote about what was happening in my life. I learned a lot that year, and that year changed me forever in so many ways. Again, as with the previous three songs you've heard already, please keep in mind the song was written and recorded over 30 years ago. The tapes I have are original. They're very worn. I would like to play a sample of this song now for you. What you're going to hear is the guitar actually tuned to standard tuning finally, as my friend brought a tuner from his dad over to my house. So we were all able to use it and realize that, oh man, we have been playing and writing and recording songs out of tune this entire time. It also will have some drums and some vocals. I had a bass line written, but no bass to record with at the time because my friend had taken it, right? So it was his bass, so I wasn't able to record it. So you won't be able to hear that now. But the guitar was written with the same guitar I was using at the time and showed you a picture of one in a previous episode, my electric Washburn. The drums you hear on the tape are the same drums that I described and showed you a picture of me at age 14 playing that set in a previous episode as well. So here's a 4-track sample of the song titled MariWine. So another old recording that takes me back. As I listened, it still hurts after all these years to know the state I was in at the time and why I chose to write what I did. So there you go. That's basically, in a nutshell, how I came to write this song. This is what the song means to me. This is the story on why the song came to fruition. It was over 30 years ago, and I can actually picture myself writing it in my bedroom at age 13, and unfortunately, I can actually still feel the emotions if I close my eyes and think about it. Crazy how music can take you back to a specific point in time in your life like that. It's so powerful. Again, I've decided to keep it as close to the original as possible. Just singing and playing a song I wrote at a very young age. I've taken the song and re-recorded using everything I know today, but still keeping its original vibe as much as I could. I thank you for listening to the story of the song MariWine. This is the fourth song of my first series of 12 songs that formed my youth from the ages of 13 to 16. I welcome you to let me know what you think of the story and the song in the comments. As I spoke about it in my introductory video to this channel, I decided to publish songs I have written to tell a story with them of my life. Everyone goes through peaks and valleys in their life. I don't believe there is not one person who flies a straight arrow their entire lives. And you know what? That's okay. We live and learn from everything we see and do in our lives. As I leave you now, I'd like to say thank you to all of you that have been listening to my story so far. As the episodes progress, you will notice my music and songwriting, everything right, all progressing in many ways. I understand I'm not this well-known musician or someone that does this for a living, but what I can tell you is this: I am a human being in this world, and to me, in this world, we all have a voice to be heard. I encourage all of you to do that in whatever way you feel is best and what works for you. For me, it's through music, songwriting, just as what I'm doing. There is not one day that goes by that I don't involve myself with music in some form of fashion. Not one day. Even in my darkest days of life that I have had, music is still a part of me. So I thank you for the time spent listening to this story. Please provide any feedback you may have, as I would really love to hear it. Please be sure to like and subscribe and to stay updated on new videos and content as my musical journey through YouTube gets published. And lastly, please stay tuned for episode 8, where I'll be showcasing the actual song written today, MariWine. Thanks for watching.